Lazy housekeeper, get dinner ready already. Instead of showing concern for me as I collapsed in dizziness, my husband, Jason, pushed me away with annoyance and glared at me with irritation. Seeing his behavior drained the color from my face, and as I slumped to the floor, he just ignored me and started watching TV. Unbelievable. As I stood there, stunned by the scene, suddenly someone appeared from behind and said to him, "Is that all you've got to say?" Immediately, Jason turned around to see the source of the voice and his face went pale with shock. My name is Marilyn Watson. I'm a 34-year-old homemaker, and I've been married to Jason, who's 5 years my senior, for almost 2 years now. For these 2 years, my life has been hellish. Jason was like, "What's this terrible food? Didn't you learn to cook from my mother?" For the first year of our marriage, I lived with Jason's parents. It was what they'd call training, I guess. Jason was a total mama's boy, and my mother-in-law, in today's words, was a real helicopter parent. She was very strict about manners, and wouldn't tolerate any backtalk from me. She was a prime example of a toxic person. A woman should be like this, and respecting your husband is a given. A wife who doesn't prioritize her husband is just useless. Growing up in such an environment, Jason once muttered shortly after our wedding that he was looking for a wife like his mother. Unaware of this, I fell for his words, and after getting married, I was subjected to a hellish life. "Marilyn, honey, I really want you to support Jason. I'm gonna be tough on you, even if it means being hard-hearted. It's all to ensure that you both have a harmonious family. Please bear with me." True to her words, from the day we moved in together, I was treated like a servant. Doing chores was just the tip of the iceberg, constantly having to read their moods was a given. I had to wake up before everyone else and wasn't allowed to rest until everyone had left for work. I'd start eating after everyone else and had to finish before everyone. If I didn't, I'd get a 1-hour lecture. If the food tasted even slightly off, both my mother-in-law and Jason would take it out on me. Day by day, they successfully molded me into a submissive wife who wouldn't dare oppose her husband. Now I'm afraid to express my opinion to him, and if his mood seems off when he comes home, I'd nervously share meals with him, always on edge. Looking back, I really question how any of this was supposed to promote a harmonious household. But at that time, I was so overwhelmed that I didn't even have the energy to question it. "You really don't have a handle on housework, do you? What did your mother teach you? I feel like it'd be easier to train a stray cat than to teach you." About a week after I moved in with my in-laws, the true nature of my once kind mother-in-law began to show. After that comment, I was subjected to daily sarcastic remarks. "It's a given to mop the hallways, and there's no room for even a speck of dust. You should prepare the broth and serve homemade meals to my husband. No matter how busy you are, you can't cut corners." To top it all off, I was even told to wash clothes by hand. Even though there was a perfectly good washing machine right in front of me, I wasn't allowed to use it. Being a homemaker and having all this free time, and yet you want to go for convenience? A true wife works her fingers to the bone. I've never seen a wife who's so set on taking the easy way out. While she shouted these complaints, my mother-in-law had no qualms about using the washing machine herself. The environment was unbearably harsh. I did confide in Jason, but he wasn't supportive. "How could you insult my mother? What kind of upbringing results in such a person? My family is perfect. Maybe it's your fault, and that's why she's being strict?" Jason never acknowledged any wrong on his mother's part. He frequently used the term train as if I was no different from a dog or a cat. He believed his mother was right, there was no doubting what she said. It was as if he was a true believer. It seemed as if he was brainwashed, not willing to listen to my side, always blaming me. My mother-in-law found out about this, and from the next day, I was only allowed to go shopping on foot. No matter how far I needed to go, she even started saying that I couldn't use public transportation. She was like, "You should live in a traditional style from now on. The sloppiness in your life is evident from the way you carry yourself." I had to welcome my husband in a uniform and serve meals as soon as he arrived home. Sitting in chairs wasn't allowed. What I was doing surpassed mere nitpicking by a long shot. I thought about running away, but I had no parents, and my only sibling, Austin, was married and living abroad. I didn't have anyone I could easily turn to for help. I cried almost every night, my spirit breaking bit by bit. By the time we finished training and started living only with Jason, I had lost a lot of weight and was both mentally and physically exhausted.
Please, Jason, I'm not feeling well. Could you let me see a doctor?
A week after we started living together, plagued by nausea and headaches, I brought up my health concerns to Jason. We hadn't been intimate since our wedding, so there was no chance of pregnancy. Given that, maybe I really am sick. The intense headache makes it hard to even sit up, and my body feels faint like I'm anemic, refusing to cooperate. I can tell my body is screaming for help. It's clear even to me that it's severe. It's not something I could bear or will away. With a pale face, I told Jason about it. He responded with an irritated tone, dismissing my plea.
What do you mean you feel bad? Be specific. You always leave out the important parts. Maybe it's because you've always been pampered. You expect people to just get you. Maybe that's why you can't even take care of yourself. I'm tired, don't waste my precious time with your vague words. Speak up and be clear, and stop annoying me.
My ears hurt more hearing his sarcastic complaints while feeling so ill, making my headache even worse. I regretted getting married in this maddening situation. He never showed any signs like this when we were dating, but as soon as we got married, he changed. Until then, he was kind, always gentlemanly, and charming, a popular guy at work. Marilyn's really clumsy, can't take my eyes off her. I worked at the same company as him. I worked hard, and when I secured a job at this major company, Austin even cried tears of joy. Back then, both my parents were alive, and when I got the job, Austin even came back to the States. We spent quality time together, just family.
If you ever face any challenges, reach out anytime. Even if I'm far away, I'm still your big brother.
Austin truly cherished me. There were parts of Jason that reminded me of Austin's kindness. He was understanding of my clumsy nature, intelligent, and the go-to guy for everyone. He was like an older brother figure I looked up to. I fell for his warm nature.
I have a headache, feel nauseous, and I'm dizzy. I'm gonna go to the doctor and get some medicine. Please, can you give me the money for the consultation?
The kindness I felt from him in the past is nowhere to be found now. There's not a trace left. Now, he's like a completely different person. He's so harsh, it's almost demonic. He doesn't see me as a human being. He looks at me with disdain, as if he's looking at trash. I've come to fear him.
It's all just you being spoiled.
I wasn't expecting him to give me the money easily, but I was at a loss for words at his unexpected response.
You have it easy as a homemaker, and yet you always seem to be whining. What in your life could be causing dizziness, nausea, or headaches? Are all these just excuses to avoid housework? I'm not saying this out of any ill intention. You don't even work outside, and you complain about headaches? Give me a break. Just take some over-the-counter meds and get over it. I won't tolerate any unnecessary spending.
The family's finances were entirely covered by Jason's salary. He couldn't manage anything around the house and had expressed before marriage that he wanted me to handle all the housework. He was like, "Don't worry about money. Whether we have 3 kids or 4, I'm gonna work hard and provide. I want you to do the things I can't." Back then, even being as unreliable as I felt, I was happy that I could be of use to him. I had enjoyed working and being his support. Leaving my job wasn't a tough decision. I believed we would have a happy life together, but this is what it has come to. I've become trapped in my life, much like a bird in a cage. I can't take it anymore, someone, please help. He doesn't even consider my health issues. After Jason reached his breaking point and stormed out of the living room, I collapsed on the spot and couldn't stop crying. I don't even have the energy to fight back against the overwhelming sadness. I want to disappear. I'd rather end my life than continue living like this. Mentally and physically exhausted, I left the house without telling Jason. After walking for a while, I found myself near the place where my childhood home used to be. Having run out of the house barefoot, my feet were now battered and bruised. I don't even have the energy to walk anymore. It was the beginning of a chilly season, and the cold wind cut through my light clothes, making me shiver. I wonder what would happen if I just laid down here and let the cold take me. Could I find peace in the afterlife? With those thoughts in mind, I slumped down in front of my now abandoned childhood home, collapsing onto the ground. I can't think anymore. I don't want to think. I just want to disappear. That's what was on my mind at the time. In a hazy state of consciousness, I heard someone calling out to me.
Hey, hang in there! Open your eyes!
I didn't recognize the voice. But, strangely, it felt familiar. As I tried to focus, my consciousness faded away. When I came to, I was staring up at the ceiling of an unfamiliar house. Slowly opening my eyes, I noticed the warmth of the room and the scent of freshly baked bread nearby. Struggling to sit up and assess my situation, I realized someone was there with me. Before I knew it, there stood a man, slightly older than me, evoking a sense of nostalgia. What? Growing wary of this stranger, he burst into hearty laughter upon seeing my scared face. What's the matter? Don't you remember me? Well, can't blame you. It's been over 20 years. Listening to his joyful voice and words, a memory flashed back. Is that you, Bob?
You got it. It's been ages, Marilyn. I happened to pass by your childhood home and found you collapsed. What on earth were you doing there?
Bob Collins used to play with Austin and me until middle school. He was a childhood friend of mine and remained a close friend of Austin. He moved away in high school, but apparently, he and Austin have been keeping in touch all these years. He's now running a transportation company and is a father of 2.
I had no idea you were around here, Bob. I was visiting my grandma's grave and decided to bring the family for a trip. But more importantly, what happened? You were so cold, I rushed you to my home.
Bob's wife, a nurse, had checked my condition and determined that I just needed some rest. From there, Bob gently asked about my situation. His wife sat next to me, shedding tears listening to a complete stranger's tale, and held me close.
We can't let this stand. If he's treating you so poorly, you should just divorce him. I wish I could just run away from that house. But I have no family or friends to turn to.
Bob's wife's words mirrored my own thoughts. I could tell she understood my situation. Tearfully, I continued to share my story, and she was at a loss for words.
If you had a place to live and a job, that would solve it, right?
While we were talking, Bob, who had been listening intently, suddenly spoke, looking for confirmation. I was puzzled by his question and looked at him, not quite grasping his intention. Then, he made a phone call. After finishing, he turned to me with a bright smile.
Marilyn, we're gonna help you out. Leave that place. I'll back you up.
Not understanding what I was told, I was bewildered. Bob gave me a reassuring smile, saying, "Leave it to me." For a while, I ended up staying at Bob's house until I felt better. Bob's wife made a call to Jason on my behalf. When confronted with someone else, he didn't utter a word, and he didn't try to force me to come back. Being away from Jason, perhaps mentally I felt a bit more stable, and my health improved. I could tell that Bob's wife genuinely cared about me. Thankful for her words and concern, I decided to lean on them a bit. Resting was my top priority. After about a week, Bob suggested that I should go back home. Encouraged by his strong words, I decided to go home. Bob accompanied me to the doorstep, where Jason greeted us with a flustered look. He wasn't his usual stern self, he seemed more concerned about my health. But there was something about his demeanor that scared me. Then, as if to keep me away from Bob, he pulled me into a tight embrace, letting out a deep sigh.
Marilyn. It's my fault. I didn't understand your pain, and I made you suffer. I'm truly sorry. Thank you for coming back.
His voice choked up. Although I was surprised, as I tried to compose myself, I caught Bob's gaze from behind, watching over me silently. With a silent lip movement, Bob mouthed like, "Stay strong." When Jason let go of me, he ruffled his hair in frustration and sighed deeply.
"You know what this means, right?"
His words, said with an air of annoyance, made my body freeze in terror. His tone was now cold, as if he had become a different person, suggesting that I had just brought trouble. Confused and unsure about entering the house, Jason forcefully pulled me inside and then shoved my hand away.
"Relying on some guy I don't even know. Didn't think you were that kind of girl," he said.
Tears welled up in my eyes. Even though I'd promised myself I'd stay strong coming back here, his harsh words and gaze made me tremble. "I'm scared. I want to leave. It's too much." Feeling like this, my vision started to blur, and I began to feel dizzy. As I seemed to be collapsing against him, he pushed me away in disgust, expressing his annoyance with a huff.
"Cut out the act. I don't even want to touch a dirty woman like you."
Thrown off balance by his push, I crashed into the wall and collapsed in the hallway. Ignoring my state, Jason turned on the TV, sprawled on the couch, and barked an order at me, as if to make his displeasure clear.
"Get dinner ready, now. Because of you, I haven't had a decent meal in a week. The least you can do is housework. So get on it and do the laundry too."
Looking around, I noticed piles of laundry overflowing everywhere. Dishes and trash were left all around. The house was a complete mess. I can't take it anymore. I can't go on with this man any longer. I want a divorce. It was at that moment I had such thoughts. Someone approached him from behind and called out to him.
"Is that all you wanted to say?"
The familiar voice startled me. As Jason slowly turned around, the color drained from his face.
"Austin? What are you doing here?"
It was Austin standing there. Why was Austin, who was supposed to be overseas, here? Jason was showing signs of panic. Jason trembled in fear of Austin's intimidating presence. Austin, having worked in construction overseas, had grown bigger and looked even more formidable than when he left the States. When Austin suddenly approached him, it was no surprise that a frail man like Jason would be scared. Moreover, Austin despises people who act inhumanely. To Austin, Jason's behavior was nothing short of reprehensible. It was no surprise to see anger on Austin's face.
"No, this is just guiding my wife, teaching her."
"Oh? So pushing a sick woman is teaching? That's news to me." Jason desperately tried to make an implausible excuse. At Jason's words, oddly enough, Bob, who was supposed to have left earlier, peeked into the living room. With a refreshing smile, he addressed Jason.
"Why are you here? How'd you get in?"
"Well, the door wasn't locked. Even if you have a lock, it won't work if the door isn't shut properly." With that, he pulled out a thin handkerchief. The handkerchief was dirty as if it had been wedged somewhere.
"Oh. When you hugged me, I dropped something on the floor to prevent the door from locking, so that the others could get into the house later."
I'm looking a bit wobbly, was supported by Bob's wife and managed to stand up. Jason's expression, alternating between looking at me and the faces of Austin and the others, was tinted with panic and fear. After hearing the reveal of how Bob and the others got in, Jason realized this had been planned from the beginning. He had always dumped all security concerns on me, so it was obvious he wouldn't check the locks. Once the door closes, it locks automatically. With that in mind, it was easy to imagine him not bothering with the front door.
"I've heard everything from Marilyn. Seems like you've gotten real close with my sister while I was overseas." "That's because I've recorded all of our interactions. Marilyn has detailed records in her diary, and even your emails and calls have been recorded and saved. All of this has been handed over to the lawyer. Including the harm you've done to Marilyn, expect to be paying for damages. From now on, deal with the lawyer about the divorce. Don't you dare approach our family again."
Everyone glared at Jason, as if to protect a trembling me, making it clear that not a single person was on Jason's side. To ensure I wouldn't be swayed by Jason's sweet words, Austin spoke on my behalf. At the mention of the word divorce, Jason became frantic and began clinging to me.
"Wait, please reconsider the divorce. I can't live without Marilyn.
Jason tried desperately to play the pitiful card. He probably did need me in many ways, but his words no longer reached me. I knew the real meaning behind his words: to use me, to have an easy life, to take out his daily frustrations on me. I wouldn't fall for his sweet words anymore. Bob and Austin stepped in to protect me from Jason's desperate attempts. From behind the two of them, for the first time since our marriage, I coldly said to Jason,
There wasn't a single moment of happiness in our married life. All I thought about was how to escape. Who'd want to stay in such a house? I want nothing to do with you. Stay away from me.
Perhaps because I had never raised my voice before, Jason stopped resisting out of shock. Devastated by the unbelievable scene before him, he seemed to lose all strength and collapsed on the spot. Finally, I was free from Jason's clutches. Once things calmed down, I headed to the hospital accompanied by Bob's wife. I was diagnosed with depression. To get some rest, I stayed at Bob's house for a while. Based on Bob's suggestion, I decided to recuperate there before starting my new life.
We're here for you. Everything's gonna be all right. If that man tries to come around, I'll chase him away. Just leave it to me.
Austin and I were truly grateful for the reassuring words and the warmth of the two kind souls. The reason Austin had returned to the States was due to a call from Bob. It turned out that Austin was the one Bob had been on the phone with, and Bob had explained my situation, urging him to come back right away.
Why didn't you rely on me?
Of course, Austin, who had come back, scolded me, but he knew I wasn't good at leaning on others. Austin regretted not coming here sooner to check on me and hugged me multiple times. Thanks to Bob arranging for a lawyer and a place to live, this situation was resolved smoothly.
From now on, live with us over there. It might be tough to adapt at the beginning, but my wife and our friends will support you fully. Don't worry.
Saying that, he offered me a job at his company, and everyone there welcomed me with open arms. As for Jason, he and his mother were sued by us for emotional abuse and are now buried in debt. Before I left the States, I met with my former colleagues and explained the circumstances leading to the divorce, resulting in Jason losing his standing at the company. Having lost his credibility, he felt uncomfortable at the company and resigned soon after. Now, he's living off his parents and doing odd jobs here and there. Although I received a letter of apology from him, saying he'd learned his lesson from this ordeal, I, of course, didn't believe a word and made sure to get compensation from him. And so, my long and tumultuous journey came to an end, and now I'm enjoying a peaceful life overseas, surrounded by kind-hearted people.
That's the penalty for ordering me around.
On a deserted beach in the middle of the night, I was left behind by Michael. Michael's car sped away, leaving me in the dust. I had received a sudden call late at night that my mother had collapsed, so I had asked Michael to drive me to the hospital. But now, suddenly, I found myself abandoned. Overwhelmed by the shock and sadness of Michael's betrayal, tears streamed down my face. The hospital where my mother was taken is almost 3 hours away from here. Sweaty and teary-eyed, I began to walk determinedly. Why did this have to happen to me? I remembered the days spent with Michael, but as I walked, I slowly regained my composure. And with that, the sorrow of betrayal transformed into anger. I will never forgive him. I'll make him regret doing this to me for the rest of his life. Vowing revenge on Michael, I continued on my way to the hospital. My name is Caitlin Anderson. I am a 47-year-old office worker. Ever since I was young, I've been uncomfortable around people, which led me to work at a computer-related company after college. Both of my parents raised me strictly, so I've been good at studying since I was in elementary school. But being a quiet person, I often felt looked down upon by others, leading me to prefer solitude. I get stressed out from constantly considering others' feelings, and it drains me. Throughout high school and college, I couldn't figure out what I wanted to do, but I continued my studies as my parents wanted. While most of my peers in college enjoyed events and mixers, I led a quiet school days. Yet, I made a few close friends during those times. One of them was a classmate named Susan Miller. Susan and I took many of the same classes, so we naturally started talking more. When I first met her, Susan was as unassuming and mature as I was, but as the years went on, she changed. She began wearing flashier clothes and makeup, and started hanging out with the kind of people I wasn't comfortable around. But in the end, she always treated me the same as when we first met. I would often see Susan around campus with a different guy each time, seeming like a completely different person from before. But I was always grateful that she still wanted to be friends with me. After graduation, we continued to meet up for meals and outings, keeping our friendship alive. I have a few friends from my college days besides Susan, but none of them have a good impression of her. They were like, I don't want to speak ill of Susan because she's Caitlin's friend, but be careful around her. That's what everyone would always say. Things changed with Susan around the time we turned 43. Out of the blue, Susan asked if I wanted to join a mixer. Just the word mixer made me cautious, and I gently turned her down. But surprisingly, Susan was still single and was thinking of hosting a party to potentially find a spouse. At my age, I couldn't even imagine dating anyone, as I had no experience with men. I was like, I can't do a mixer at this point in my life. I said with a chuckle, and Susan replied with a serious face. I really want to find someone serious now. Don't worry, there won't be any flaky people like before. Maybe Susan was aware that I knew about her past relationships, so she emphasized that this would be a genuine gathering. Moved by her enthusiasm, I decided to attend. But there's no guarantee of finding a match, okay? You never know if there's gonna be a compatible person. I was worried about embarrassing the host, Susan, but she was delighted with my decision to attend. A few days later, the day of the gathering arrived. I dressed up, a bit out of my comfort zone, and arrived at the meeting place 30 minutes earlier than the specified time. As I waited, a bit overwhelmed by the crowd, a man approached me. Excuse me, are you here for Susan's dinner party? The man who approached me had such a youthful face that he could easily be mistaken for someone in their 20s. He mentioned he was attending through Susan's invitation. He introduced himself as Michael Anderson and was only 2 years younger than me. His appearance, giving off a slightly flashy impression, but his manner of speaking showed sincerity. Michael, laughing about how he arrived early because of his nerves, somehow made me feel a strange kinship with him. After a while, everyone arrived, and the dinner began. I chatted with other men, but my attention was solely on Michael.
Caitlin, you seem to like Michael, don't you?
Susan whispered as we both went to the restroom at the same time. Later on, with Susan's help, Michael and I exchanged contact information. I was elated, but I worried it might be bothersome for him. However, Michael cheerfully suggested let's have dinner again. It seemed Susan didn't find a match at the mixer and seemed a bit down about it. I apologized multiple times, feeling guilty about being the only one who made a connection, but she just laughed it off, asking why I was saying sorry. Afterward, Michael and I went on several dates and began a relationship. It's kinda weird, right? Having no experience with men at my age? I often voiced this concern, but Michael would always hold me tight in reassurance. About 3 years later, when I was 46, Michael proposed, and we got married. It still doesn't feel real that I got married, and life feels a bit surreal. Michael worked in sales at a major cosmetics company, and considering our age, we decided not to have children. I chose to continue working, supporting Michael's lifestyle. However, about 6 months into our marriage, Michael's behavior began to change. The ever-so-kind Michael started hurling verbal abuse at me.
Why are you always so damn nagging? Why do I have to care about your feelings all the time?
Michael, in his anger, kicked the trash can and chairs around the room. But after a while, he'd calm down, crying and apologizing. He'd say things like he's overwhelmed with work, or the pressure's building up and he's stressed out. Listening to Michael's struggles, I'd stay by his side until he felt better. Feeling guilty about discussing our problems with Susan, who introduced us, I kept everything to myself. Taking advantage of my patience and kindness, Michael's behavior escalated. He rarely came straight home after work, usually returning late at night. Whenever I'd ask him about it, he'd get angry and dismissive. Is this how all men are? With my limited experience in relationships, I couldn't help but wonder if Michael's behavior was normal. During this time, a friend from college visited my house. That's just not right, no matter how you look at it. As I laughed and talked about my married life, my friend said that to me with a serious face.
But he's usually so kind, you know? After he gets like that, he apologizes.
Hearing this, my friend just shook her head in disbelief and said, Caitlin, he's taking you for granted because you don't speak up. If you keep letting it go on, he's gonna walk all over you and it'll be too late to do anything about it. But Michael has never been physically violent to me. He's tired from work every day. Isn't it okay for him to let loose a bit when he comes home? If I nag too much, Michael, who chose to marry someone like me, might end up disliking me. I gave my friend a brief reply and pondered if there was something I might have done wrong. A few days later, I decided to open up to Susan about my life with Michael. His late nights, his tantrums and harsh words when he's in a bad mood.
Oh, many guys do that. He is probably just jealous of you and that's why he's saying such things.
Susan's answer was exactly what I was hoping for. Everyone has their struggles in marriage. I want Michael, who chose someone like me, to live as comfortably as possible. All it takes is a bit of patience on my part. I was grateful to Susan for listening to my troubles and decided to do my best to be a good wife. Life with Michael continued as usual, but following Susan's advice, I tried even harder to be patient and play the role of a good wife. Then, one Saturday night, both Michael and I had the day off, and he had gone to play at a casino since morning and returned home in the late afternoon. From the moment Michael opened the door, I could tell he had lost a lot of money and was in a bad mood. I did my best not to upset him, avoiding anything that might provoke him. Still, he yelled at me about dinner being late, the bathroom being not clean, and so on. Michael went to bed late. Once Michael, who had been raging, finally settled down, I too could finally relax. Being careful not to make any noise that might wake Michael, I began to watch a drama I had been looking forward to on a streaming service. But I must have been more tired than I realized. Before I knew it, I had fallen asleep on the sofa. The next thing I knew, my phone, which was set to vibrate, was making a loud noise on the table. Oh no, if Michael woke up before me, he's gonna be mad. In a panic, I grabbed my phone and checked the screen. It was past 1 a.m. It wasn't an alarm, but a call that had caused the phone to vibrate so loudly. Though my mind was still foggy from sleep, seeing the displayed name snapped me to attention. Dad? Seeing the name Dad on the screen makes my heart flutter. Getting a call at this hour, something must have happened. I answer, expecting the worst.
Caitlin? Your mom fainted when she got up to go to the bathroom. I called 911. They've taken her to the hospital.
My father's voice on the other end is clearly shaken, his usual calm demeanor gone.
Caitlin, I need you to come to the hospital as soon as you can.
Panicking, I ask for the hospital's location and hang up. As I'm getting ready and heading to the front door, I realize I can't drive. And at this hour, public transport's not an option. It's an emergency concerning Michael's mother-in-law. If I wake Michael, he'd surely be willing to drive. Rushing to the bedroom where Michael is sleeping, I shake him awake.
Michael!
At my call, Michael grumbles irritably. Keep it down. With my eyes closed, I tell the still grumbling Michael about my mother's situation.
We gotta get going. Get the car ready.
Losing my patience with Michael, who's just rolling around in bed, I raise my voice. Then Michael clicks his tongue, finally throwing the covers off and sitting up.
Hey!
Still in his sweatpants, Michael grabs the car keys and heads towards the car, leaving me behind.
I'm really sorry for waking you up at this hour.
Once in the car, I tell Michael which hospital my mother was taken to, repeatedly apologizing. The two of us drive in silence on the deserted road towards the hospital. When we approach a coast with a view of the ocean on our left, Michael suddenly stops the car. Hey, can you get me a coffee from that store? I need to wake up. It makes sense, he was jolted awake and now he's driving. Probably not thinking straight with the drowsiness. I nod silently, open the car door, and head to the store at a brisk pace.
Let's see. Michael can't take it black, so something sweet would be good.
I chose the sweetest looking coffee, then just to be sure, also select a light sugar latte and another drink. The moment I left the store after taking them, Michael rolled down the car window.
That's the penalty for ordering me around!
Michael shouted at me, and the next thing I knew, his car was speeding away. I stood there, in shock, watching Michael's car disappear at high speed, unable to grasp what just happened. What did Michael yell out to me when he opened the window? The penalty for ordering me around? As I stood by the store, holding the bottles of coffee, moths drawn to the light of the store flew into me. It took me a while to comprehend Michael's words and the reality of my situation. Did he even direct those words at me? Was it some sort of joke? But gradually, I remembered the urgency concerning my mother, and I found myself walking along the coastline without really thinking. The tepid sea breeze blew, and I kept walking on the deserted shore. Walking helped to clear my panicking mind. I was left behind by Michael. He probably lied about wanting a coffee just to get me out of the car. He definitely left me here with bad intentions. I had always loved Michael since we met and believed in him, but he doesn't love me. That can't be true. After he yells at me, he usually apologizes and nags because he cares about me. In my rush, it seems I wore my sneakers without socks. My bare feet started to throb with pain from the friction. Tears began to flow from the pain and the betrayal by Michael.
Why? What happened?
Memories with Michael crossed my mind. I was worried about my mother, but the pain of being betrayed by my first love was overwhelming. Tears wouldn't stop, but I kept walking, realizing only then that I had left my phone in his car. If he truly loved me, he would have rushed to my aid, especially knowing I was stranded without being able to call for help. If he came back now, apologized, and hugged me, I'd forgive everything. He must have noticed my phone on the seat, but there was no sign of his car returning. With my mind in turmoil and my face tear-streaked, I continued on what seemed like an endless path. I had no idea how much time had passed, but just as I started to lose feeling in my tired legs, I finally saw a hospital. I entered the grounds, found the after-hours entrance, and told them my mother's name. My feet hurt terribly from the long walk.
It's Smith. Carol Smith.
Upon hearing my mother's name, the security guard called someone and then kindly opened the door for me. I was momentarily confused as I stepped in, but soon I heard footsteps approaching from the distance.
Are you Miss Smith's daughter?
A female nurse appeared from around the corner, and after confirming my name, she escorted me to the waiting room where my father was waiting. There were a few chairs in a dimly lit corner of the hallway, and my father stood there looking restless.
What were you doing all this time?
When my father saw me, he looked shocked to see me dragging my feet, soaked in sweat. Seeing my father, I let out a deep sigh and practically collapsed into one of the chairs. I then calmly recounted the events that had just transpired to my father. What was he thinking? My usually calm father grimaced in anger thinking about what Michael had done. It had taken me about 3 hours to get to the hospital from the time I left home with Michael. The anger and disappointment towards Michael were significant, but I was also worried about my mother's condition. My father, who was initially too shocked by the sight of his battered daughter to notice his surroundings, finally informed me about my mother's situation. Luckily, about an hour before I arrived at the hospital, she regained consciousness and is now resting in the ICU. Neither Michael nor I could be reached by phone. Fearing that something might have happened to the both of us, my father had been quite worried. As I talked with my father, I could feel my affection for Michael gradually waning. When I get home, I'm gonna tell him off for sure. The discomfort I had been feeling all this time was justified. I felt incredibly foolish and pathetic for letting a man like that control me, but now I've finally woken up. I decided to break up with Michael and waited for my mother's condition to stabilize. While my father and I sat on the chairs in the hallway, my father's cell phone rang.
Yes.
Exactly. My father answered the call with a brief look of surprise, but then nodded as he listened.
Well, both my daughter and I are here.
After hanging up, my father turned to me and began to speak.
It seems Michael was brought here.
I unintentionally let out a strange cry and stared into my father's eyes. The call was from the hospital, informing that soon after my arrival, Michael had been urgently admitted. Apparently, after leaving me behind, Michael had gone home with a lot of alcohol. In his drunken state, he had a bad fall down the stairs, and when the ambulance arrived, they found Michael covered in blood. Rather than being concerned about Michael, I was simply astonished. Leaving his wife in the middle of nowhere in the middle of the night, and then this. Knowing that his mother-in-law was taken to the hospital, yet he was casually having a drinking party. I felt so ashamed and embarrassed to have lived with such a man. I heard Michael had been treated and taken to a ward. Seeing me, he'd probably blame everything on me. Even though I used to love him so much, now I can only think about the things I dislike about him. I'd be embarrassed to be thought of as the wife of such a man by the hospital staff. With a heavy heart, I went to the reception desk, asked for Michael's room, and then went alone to visit him. Lying on the bed, with bandages wrapped around his head and body, was Michael. As soon as he saw me enter, he opened his mouth, anger evident in his eyes. Despite his pitiful state, I could tell he was trying to use me as an outlet for his stress.
Caitlin, what have you been doing all this time? Look what's happened to me. It's all because of.
Let's break up. Before Michael could finish complaining, I abruptly said that. What? Sitting up on the bed, Michael looked stunned.
I've finally come to my senses. You always think everything's gonna go your way. You throw tantrums like a child and cry your eyes out when you're upset.
I looked down on the incapacitated Michael, scolding him for everything he'd done.
I bet you're cheating, aren't you? I'm ashamed I married such a pathetic man. Truly ashamed.
My voice raised, and fear clearly showed in Michael's eyes.
Michael!
Just then, a woman suddenly burst into the room. I turned around and there was Susan. In that moment, I realized everything. Susan and Michael had been having an affair. Thinking back to the last time we discussed things, she had tried to convince me like that's just how men are. I couldn't help but laugh. Susan's eyes widened in surprise, repeatedly saying like,
No! It's not like that!
Susan, don't you realize you've been fooled by such a pathetic man? I truly feel sorry for you. I glared at the two of them and started walking towards the room's entrance.
Goodbye. But don't think this is the end.
I paused, turned back with a smirk, and said just that. The next day, my mother recovered nicely, but she had to stay in the hospital for a while just to be safe. Seeing my mother's face, I felt relieved and quickly went home to pack my things. Michael, unable to move, was also forced to stay in the hospital for a while. Betrayed by both my husband and friend, all I could think about was how to make them pay. On a whim, I opened the study door that Michael had told me never to enter. He must have thought I'd never defy him. On the study desk, there was a photos of Susan and Michael hugging each other. Everything about it was just pathetic. I took a picture of them with my smartphone and left the home we had shared. Once back at my parents' house, I put my stuff down and headed to a law firm a friend had recommended. The attorney, known for handling divorce and disputes between couples, smiled with satisfaction when I told him everything and showed him the photos of Michael and Susan. We have more than enough evidence. They both are gonna regret this for the rest of their lives. I felt a chill at my own calmness, but fueled by past betrayals, I decided on my next move. Early the next morning, I received a call from Michael.
What the hell did you do? They fired me from my job!
I could almost see Michael sobbing and yelling on the other side of the phone. The truth was, I had called Michael's company pretending to be a concerned wife.
I'm not sure if my husband informed you, but, embarrassingly, he got drunk, caused a scene and fell down some stairs. What? No, it wasn't a car accident.
Yes, Michael had lied to his company about being in a car accident and being hospitalized. Knowing this, I pretended not to know and contacted his workplace. I knew that once they realized it was a false report, they'd dig deeper, which was what I had anticipated. I detailed everything, including the fact he left me stranded in the middle of the night and his affair. Just as I'd hoped, Michael, who had been the face of the company in sales, was given the pink slip. It was probably only a matter of time before this man, who had been up to no good on a daily basis, would bring harm to the company. To add insult to injury, Michael was slapped with the divorce procedure. The news also reached Susan. Eventually we went through the division of property. When told that the forgotten photos were founded by me, Susan continuously berated Michael. Blinded by immediate desires, they were once a loving couple, but after all, it was just a passing relationship. Playing the blame game wouldn't solve anything. The two soon had a falling out and lost everything. Michael not only lost his job but also had to sell his house. Rumors about Susan's misdeeds spread fast, and it seemed she too lost her job. She apologized tearfully several times, but of course, such actions couldn't be accepted. I intend to have her reflect on the consequences of betrayal for the rest of her life. I finalized my divorce from Michael, and I was single again. It was as if the life I'd lived for several years had been a lie, and my quiet everyday life returned. After the divorce was finalized, I took some time off to take care of my mother. I wonder if, in such situations, people go on what's called a heartbreak vacation here. Returning to my parents' home, I pondered these recent hectic events. In the meantime, my mother had recovered well and was able to convalesce at home. Knowing about the incident that led to the divorce, she seemed somewhat apologetic.
Did all of this happen because of me?
I denied it with a laugh.
No, it's more like a wake-up call. I'm embarrassed that I married a guy like that.
Yet, perhaps concerned about her daughter, she kept asking
isn't there someone good out there for you?
My friend who knew the whole story both consoled and scolded me. But in the end, my friend, who'd warned me repeatedly about Michael and kept saying
I told you so many times,
had a somewhat relieved look.
This time, you just happened to fall for a bad guy. Take your time and find someone good next time.
Right now, I can't even think about another relationship, but I wonder if someday I'll fall in love again. Having felt for years that loving someone wasn't the only path to happiness, my feelings are mixed. But now, I've got so much money it makes me laugh. Some might think I'm a woman without a hint of romance, but compared to the days when I was constantly on edge around Michael, I feel happier now. For a while, I think I'm gonna live freely, relying on my parents' generosity. When I get tired of being alone, I'm sure there'll be another good encounter. This ordeal taught me to stand up with courage and showed me a surprising side of myself that I can do anything if I try. With this newfound confidence, I can achieve anything. And with that, I took a new step forward.
Divorce Dad now while you can.
Yes. I blurted out without thinking. My daughter had just woken me up this early morning and asked me to divorce my husband. Even adults would be taken aback by such words. Why would my daughter say something like that? When I asked her to explain further, she said, "Well, Daddy wants to say goodbye to Mommy."
What, goodbye? Is that true? Yeah. That's why you need to do it quickly.
I didn't doubt what my daughter was saying, but the idea that my husband was thinking such a thing was hard to believe all of a sudden. However, my daughter's eyes were fixed firmly on my face. That's a level of seriousness that doesn't seem typical for a 5-year-old. It was a gaze so serious that it didn't seem like she was lying, not even for a moment.
I understand. Nancy, get ready right away.
Saying that, we packed our things and left the house together. My name is Emily Mitchell. Living with my husband David and our 5-year-old daughter Nancy. I met David during college, and we got married when I was about to graduate. I had planned to support my husband as a homemaker. However, my husband's career didn't go as planned, and I had to start working too, eventually becoming an employee at a local company. But the following year, I became pregnant, and after discussing with my husband about the future, I decided to quit my job. Then, a year later, our daughter Nancy was born, and I had planned to focus on childcare and housework from then on, but things didn't go smoothly. The cause of that was my husband. After graduating from college, my husband joined a major company. However, his naturally quiet personality and lack of adaptability caused problems, and he quickly resigned. He went from job to job and finally joined his current company 4 years ago. My husband has been working for 4 years now, and he seems to think that our life is stable, but honestly, it's far from that. In fact, it's tough. With my husband's salary, our future is uncertain at best. I'm home. Welcome back. This is for this month. My husband, David, who had just finished work and returned home, gave me living expenses for the month. Thank you. He smiled happily in response to those words and headed to the back room to change from his suit to casual clothes. Watching his back as he left, I couldn't help but sigh. I appreciate it, but... I chuckled as I looked at the amount of living expenses. We also have a 5-year-old daughter. She's at an age that requires a lot of attention, and it costs money, too. And the amount we need for our expenses is incomparable to when it's just the two of us. So, having a bit more money is certainly helpful. But there's a limit to it. The living expenses my husband gives me are always $500. Honestly, it's not enough. In my heart, I wish he would give a bit more, but it would be cruel to ask him for that. Despite being a full-time employee, my husband's take-home pay is only $3,000. Is his company really okay? I can't help but wonder about his low salary. Knowing that, I can't ask for more. Especially with that cheerful face of his. I can't say anything more. And there's another reason I can't ask for more. I've asked for more living expenses before, and my husband's reaction was intense.
Are you telling me to give you more? Do you have any idea how hard I'm working with this low salary?
I had only discussed it because I thought our situation would get tougher with our daughter, who had just been born, but my husband was furious. Certainly, I should have considered my husband's situation before speaking, but at the time, I was too overwhelmed with childcare to think about him.
Well, at least consider changing to a job with a better salary. Stop bothering me. My current job suits me just fine. You, who doesn't even work, shouldn't meddle.
I'm sorry. My husband is generally quiet, and people around us describe him as a mild-mannered person, but that's only when he's outside. Inside the house, he acts like he's in charge and is rather domineering, so to speak. He's what you'd call a different person at home. If I say anything that might upset him even a little, he gets angry immediately, just like he does now. This became a bit of a trauma, and I started speaking with caution when talking to my husband. It was one of those times. Mom, are you okay?
Huh? Oh, I'm fine. Thanks for worrying, Nancy.
Yeah. I work from home. But taking care of my daughter and doing housework makes it difficult to find as much time as I'd like for work, so I don't earn as much as I'd hoped. In those daily struggles, a little angel like my daughter helps heal my heart. Mom, I'm being good. Do your best. She said this while bringing a cup filled to the brim with orange juice in her tiny hands.
Thank you, Nancy. We'll go shopping together once I finish work, okay?
Yeah. My daughter's smile is so adorable as she nods with enthusiasm. I absolutely don't want to make this child go through any hardships. If I'm earning less, I just need to work harder to increase my income. With my daughter's help, I've been able to focus more on my work. And then, one day, I'm home. Nancy, I bought you a toy. It's the one you've been wanting for a while. My husband, who had never bought a toy before, had bought one for our daughter for the first time. However, when our daughter saw the toy handed to her by my husband, she said, "Mom bought me this same toy. See," and showed it to him. Then my husband's demeanor changed dramatically. He snatched the toy from our daughter and forcefully threw it towards her. Luckily, it didn't hit our daughter, but the thought of what could have happened sent shivers down my spine.
What are you doing? Shut up.
Amidst our shouting, our daughter burst into tears. Perhaps exacerbated by this, my husband grabbed our crying daughter, and with a swift motion, he raised his right arm. Realizing the danger, I instinctively shielded my daughter.
Get out of the way. No!
My husband swung his raised right arm directly towards my face. A heavy, dull thud echoed in the room. Then, without saying a word, my husband went to the back room, changed into casual clothes, and left the house again. Left behind at that moment, I held my daughter tightly.
Nancy, are you okay?
Though she wasn't sobbing like before, it seemed that our daughter had felt fear at the sight of her father's unfamiliar actions, as she trembled slightly in my arms. Once I made sure our daughter had calmed down, I went to the bathroom and noticed, oh, I have a bruise. A noticeable bruise. It wasn't severe enough to warrant a hospital visit, which was a relief, but I couldn't understand at all why my husband had become so angry. Could it be that he didn't like that I had bought our daughter a toy, or maybe he couldn't accept that it was the same toy? Regardless, the distrust I felt towards my husband after this incident was not something that could easily be erased. The thought of something similar happening again in the future is something I really don't want to think about. 2 hours later, my husband returned. Despite making eye contact with me, he didn't say a word and went straight to the bedroom, carrying his pajamas, and then headed to the bathroom. After he came out of the bath, he went directly to bed. I had some anxiety that something might happen again, but I felt relieved that he went to sleep right away. I decided to sleep in the living room with our daughter. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of the door slamming. It seems like my husband had gone to work. The events of yesterday came to mind, and I couldn't help but sigh. Beside me was our daughter, sleeping soundly. I gently stroked her while strongly wishing that today would be uneventful. 3 months have passed since that incident, and we've been able to live without any further incidents. My husband continued to work hard as before. I took care of household chores and our daughter while also working from home, and life returned to normal. I'm home. Today, I bought a Mont Blanc cake from that popular bakery everyone's been talking about. Come on, let's have some.
Thank you.
Daddy, where's mine? Sorry, Nancy, there isn't one for you this time. It's just for Mommy. I promise I'll get one for you next time, okay? Since that incident, my husband has changed dramatically. He became more talkative, and his domineering attitude at home disappeared. He became kinder to both me and our daughter. Perhaps that incident had changed his awareness. However, there's still one thing that concerns me. It's the moment when I receive our monthly living expenses. My husband's salary remains low. But despite that, he now gives his entire monthly paycheck as our living expenses. This is for this month. Even though my salary is low, this should be enough, right?
Wait a minute, you're giving me the entire amount again? We don't need this much. I can cover the shortfall with what I earn from working from home.
True. But, isn't it a problem if I only give you $500 for our living expenses? People would laugh if they found out. It's unsettling. Even though he has changed, he's like a completely different person when it comes to this. At that moment, I felt an indescribable sense of unease. It was then. Hey, Dad, want to take a bath together? Oh? It's been a while. Sure, let's do it today. Yeah. In our daughter's hands was my husband's pajamas.
Nancy?
It was a sight I hadn't seen in a while. Until recently, my husband and our daughter used to take a bath together every day. However, since that incident, our daughter had been keeping her distance from my husband. Of course, they hadn't taken a bath together during this time. So, I was surprised when our daughter asked him to take a bath with her. As I watched the two of them head to the bathroom, our daughter briefly looked at me. Her eyes at that moment seemed to be trying to communicate something to me. About 10 minutes after they entered the bathroom, our daughter came out first. Then she told me that Dad was going on a business trip starting tomorrow. Mom, Daddy's going on a business trip from tomorrow.
A business trip? I didn't hear about that.
Until now, he had always informed me when he was going on a business trip, but this time he hadn't. Afterward, I asked my husband about the business trip when he came out of the bath. It was decided suddenly.
Suddenly? When and where are you going?
It's a bit far away this time. It's an important and confidential business trip. I had never heard of a business trip that needed to be kept secret. Despite feeling uneasy about my husband's inconsistent words, I went to bed that day as usual. Then, the next day, I was awakened by some noise coming from the living room. What? When I peeked into the living room, my husband was getting ready for his business trip and said, "Sorry, did I wake you up? Are you leaving already?"
Yeah, as soon as I arrive there, I have to start working. I want to go with plenty of time.
It's good to be early, but it's still 5 o'clock. Are you going that early?
I'm just an employee, you know. I don't want to be late, so I'm going a bit early.
With those words, my husband left for his business trip. Everything about my husband's actions felt suspicious. There's definitely something going on, I thought to myself. And that's when it happened. Suddenly, our daughter woke up and said, "Let's divorce Dad now."
Huh?
I couldn't help but utter a strange word. Because our daughter had just woken up early in the morning and told me to divorce Dad. Why would our daughter say something that even adults would hesitate to say? I asked her to explain what she meant, and she said, "You see, Daddy is trying to say goodbye to Mom."
Huh, say goodbye? Is that true? Yeah! So we have to do it quickly.
I didn't doubt what our daughter was saying, but it was hard to believe that my husband was thinking of such a thing. However, our daughter was looking straight into my eyes. And her gaze was so serious that it was hard to believe she was only 5 years old. This young but determined gaze didn't seem like she was lying at all.
All right, I understand. Nancy, get ready right now.
Saying that, I quickly packed our things, and the two of us left the house. A few days later, my husband called me in a panicked tone.
Hey, where are you right now? When I came back from my business trip, no one was here, your stuff was gone. What's going on? Explain it to me.
Welcome back. How was your business trip?
I bet going alone wasn't much fun, was it? What?
Don't try to deceive me.
I know your business trips were all lies.
All of my husband's business trips had been lies.
What are you talking about? There's no way my business trips were lies. If you're so curious, why don't you contact the company? That way, everything will become clear. You can find out if I'm lying or if you're just mistaken.
If you're going to insist like that, should we really contact the company?
Huh? If I said that, you thought I wouldn't believe it and wouldn't contact them, right?
So you said that so confidently, didn't you?
But you see, there's no doubt that you're the one lying.
Because I've already confirmed with the company.
And then, they asked me if I knew that you've taken 3 days off starting today, but I had no idea.
My husband let out a small surprised sound on the phone. My husband, who had left the house claiming it was a business trip when it was just a vacation, had spent 3 days moving from place to place in his car to ensure that no one would see him. Are you surprised? My husband probably didn't think I'd go this far. Indeed, the old me wouldn't have doubted my husband's words about his business trips and wouldn't have thought of contacting the company. But this time was different. And it was all thanks to our daughter.
Your business trips being lies were told to me by Nancy. Nancy? Don't be ridiculous. There's no way Nancy could know something like that. You're probably the one who put these ideas in her head. Isn't that right?
That's absolutely impossible. You know it too, don't you?
Even though Nancy is only 5 years old, she pays close attention to everything around her and observes us as well. She sees what we're thinking and what we're trying to do right now.
Despite being just 5 years old, our daughter had a somewhat mature way of thinking and a broader perspective. That was probably influenced by TV dramas. Our daughter had been extremely fussy as a baby. I thought it would pass quickly as she grew up, but in her case, it lasted longer and was worse than I had imagined. During those times, I used to watch TV dramas while trying to soothe her. And even now that our daughter had grown up, she continued to watch TV dramas as if it were a matter of course. From the latest dramas to old ones, and even 2-hour mystery dramas. If there was something she couldn't finish watching, she would record it and watch it later. It had reached the point where I, too, was amazed at how much our daughter loved dramas. Perhaps because of that, her way of thinking and speaking naturally became more mature. You said it before,
didn't you? Your duty to protect your family. That's why you should understand your family better than anyone else. That's right. I understand you and Nancy better than anyone else. In that case, you probably understand what I'm about to say. Of course.
In that case, I won't hold back. I'm going to divorce you.
What?
The word divorce that I had uttered caused my husband to vehemently object.
What do you mean, divorce? Why is it coming to that? What don't you like about me? He exclaimed. It's not about whether I like you or not. I'm divorcing you to protect myself before you eliminate me.
Huh?
I don't understand what you mean.
My husband suddenly became quiet. Pressing the issue, I confronted my husband and said,
You don't understand what I'm saying? Well then, let me explain it to you.
The whole situation had started when our daughter had expressed her desire for us to get a divorce. At first, I was baffled, wondering why she would say such a thing. But then she mentioned the word goodbye. It was a word she had picked up from watching TV dramas. She had a particular fondness for mystery dramas, which often included scenes of someone passing away. It seems that the daughter, while watching such scenes, intuitively felt that causing harm to others and as a result, them not being able to breathe, was not a good thing.
So, Mommy, this woman said goodbye, and this man did too. Is this a bad person? Yeah, that's right. People who make others say goodbye like this are bad people.
I see. In other words, the word goodbye that my daughter used means that someone would stop breathing. When my daughter told me, Daddy is going to say goodbye to Mommy, I wouldn't have understood it if I hadn't watched dramas with my daughter. If I hadn't spent time with my daughter, I probably wouldn't have realized the meaning. And if things had continued that way, my life would have been taken by my husband.
Do you really think I would do something like that? It's not about what I think, it's the truth, isn't it? Don't be ridiculous. Why would I need to stop my wife's breathing? Besides, you're quite something. You're going to divorce me just because a 5-year-old said so? Stop making a fool out of me.
It seemed like everything I said was in vain. In that case, I had to show my husband irrefutable evidence.
If you're going to say that, then fine, I'll show you proper evidence. Evidence that you tried to take my life. Evidence?
I hung up the phone and sent the images to my husband's email. Soon after, he called back.
Why would you?
Surprised? What I sent to my husband was the plan he had stored as data on his phone to suffocate me. The details were written meticulously. When my husband returned from his business trip, he planned to take me and our daughter out for a drive, claiming it was a family outing. He intended to give us drinks laced with sleeping pills and leave us in the car. He intended to make it look like a murder-suicide, where he would be the first to discover the scene. What's even more horrifying is that he had planned to harm our daughter as well. It was a plan that seemed inconceivable for a person to execute.
By the way, this information came to light thanks to Nancy. Huh?
It was from the incident when Nancy took a shower with him a while ago. Our daughter, who had come out of the bath ahead of us, quickly came over to me and handed me my husband's cell phone, saying, "Mom, take a look at this." What was displayed on the screen revealed the entire extent of my husband's plan. There, a litany of complaints about me was written. Despite being employed, my husband was frustrated that I, working from home, earned more. It was enough to hurt his pride as a husband and as a man. This accumulation of grievances had turned my husband's pride into a bundle of jealousy, and eventually, he began to believe that if I were no longer around, he could preserve his pride. He started researching ways to eliminate me from his life.
Did you snoop through my phone without permission? I didn't intend to look at it. It was until Nancy told me.
The reason our daughter knew about the contents of his phone went back quite some time. There was a time when Nancy asked my husband if she could watch a TV drama. However, because my husband was also watching TV at that time, he didn't allow her to watch it. Instead, he gave her his mobile phone and told her to play a game or something. When Nancy opened the phone to play the game, she encountered a screen she had never seen before. However, it was precisely the elaborate plan my husband had carefully detailed to eliminate me. It was identical to what she had seen in a TV drama before. It was then that Nancy understood what my husband was thinking and planning.
Even so, it doesn't give you the right to invade someone's privacy like that.
Can you really say that considering what you were planning to do? Do you understand what you were about to do?
Well, I mean,
I'm grateful that I trusted Nancy. Otherwise, both she and I might have. After that, my husband abruptly ended the call. Right after, I received a message on my phone. In that message, it said, "Don't think it will end like this. I have a plan too." 2 hours later, my husband actually came to my parents' house.
So, this is where you are. How did you know I was here? I knew your destination was already decided. Going to your parents' house is obvious.
My daughter was trembling behind me. "Go to the back room, Nancy." She nodded and headed to the back room. I didn't expect him to come all the way to my parents' house, but since he was here, I had to gather my courage and face him.
So, what did you come here for? You didn't come to take us back, did you? That's exactly why I'm here. We're a family, so we should be together. It's only natural. Together? With the person who tried to eliminate me and Nancy? Stop fooling yourself.
We continued our heated exchange. "Don't worry about that incident anymore. I've changed my ways. From now on, the three of us will live happily together. It's for you and Nancy." That was definitely a lie. His eyes revealed it.
I've said it before, but I'm getting a divorce from you. I've even prepared a lawyer. Huh? Even if you have it, it's meaningless unless I agree.
True, but it won't come to that.
What?
I showed him something.
What do you want by showing me this plan I had recorded? Are you trying to blackmail me with this? Even if you do that, I won't get a divorce.
I won't resort to threats. Doing something like that would make me just like you. What I did was report everything, along with all the evidence, to the police.
The police? Of course. When someone's life is in danger because of their spouse, they can't just do nothing.
The moment he heard police, my husband's expression changed dramatically, and he tried to grab me. I hurriedly tried to close the front door, but he forcefully stopped me.
You! Don't mess with me!
My normally quiet husband had transformed into a different person. His anger was overwhelming, and I couldn't restrain him with my strength.
Mommy!
I heard my daughter's voice from behind. When I turned around, I saw her trembling in fear as she looked at us. She was so scared. "It's okay, Mom will protect you no matter what." As I said that, I felt a surge of strength, as if it came naturally. Was it the power of a mother trying to protect her child? I tried my best to close the front door, resisting my husband's strength, but his power was beyond what I had imagined.
It's no use.
Just then, something happened. I heard a voice saying, "What are you doing?" And at the same time, my husband screamed and was pushed backward.
Huh?
I wondered what had just happened and looked outside through the small gap in the front door. I heard voices saying, "Are you okay, Emily?" and "Father." He had appeared just in the nick of time.
Dad, why are you here? You said you were leaving on a business trip today.
I happened to forget something, so I came back to get it. Although it was a coincidence, I was relieved that my father had come. But seriously, what's going on here?
Oh!
My husband, perhaps overwhelmed by my father's presence, collapsed to the ground without a word. It's no wonder. My father is quite tall, standing at 6 feet and 2.8 inches. In addition, my father, who dedicated himself to boxing during his school days and still goes to the gym, has a muscular body that doesn't make him seem like he's in his 60s at all. Even young troublemakers would avoid crossing paths with my father, and my husband had no chance of resisting.
Why are you here, and what were you planning to do with our daughter and granddaughter?
Unable to bear the situation any longer, my husband tried to leave while shedding tears. However, in the next moment, several men caught him.
Don't move! What's going on? Let me go!
The resisting husband was subdued by several police officers and taken away.
That's a relief. By the way, why did David come here? He came for a somewhat extreme final farewell, didn't he?
My husband, who had been reported for attempting to harm me and my daughter. During that time, the four of us, including my parents, decided to move to a distant place just to be safe. I entrusted the divorce papers, child support, and property division to the lawyer, so I wouldn't have to see my husband again. Eventually we got divorced. It seemed my ex-husband had found another job to pay child support. He wouldn't be leading a decent life for a while. On the other hand, I was living happily with my parents and daughter in our new home.
Nancy, take this to your grandparents' place.
Okay.
Be careful not to drop it.
I will. There was no more stress in our lives, and every day was filled with smiles. I sincerely hoped that these happy days would continue forever.
Don't drink or eat, just work.
The one saying this in front of me is my mother-in-law, Emily. As I sat in the chair, she suddenly approached and blurted that out. When I expressed my desire to rest for a bit, to my shock, she suddenly kicked my belly, even though I'm 7 months pregnant. It seems like no one around noticed. However, one person is silently watching. As soon as Emily sat down, that person stood up and started heading my way. My name is Suzanne Williams. I'm turning 35 this year. I met my husband, Robert, back in high school, and we reconnected at a reunion after we started working. We hit it off and started hanging out, and as time went on, we started dating. We got married when I was 27. We wanted kids, but for some reason, even after 5 years of marriage, we couldn't conceive. Being with Robert was fun and happy, but I always had the strong desire to have children. After another 3 years, paying attention to my cycle, diet, and various other factors, I finally became pregnant. By the time I reached 35, most of my peers had already started raising their kids. Having many friends with parenting experience made my life easier. But then, at 7 months pregnant, the most challenging event of my life occurred. Robert and I have been married for 8 years, and there are still things I respect about him. But when it comes to his parents, it's a different story. Especially Emily, my mother-in-law, she's the real problem. I never really got along with Emily. I first met her before our wedding, and she wasn't friendly from the get-go.
What makes you think a skinny thing like you can have a child? I preferred Robert's ex, you know. The slightly chubby one.
She said, discussing Robert's past relationships even with his fiancée present. She also had issues with the gift I brought.
What's this? Some exclusive New York treat? I've never heard of it. I wanted some European pastries. You're so thoughtless.
I had asked Robert what Emily would like, thinking she might have a preference. He mentioned she'd been wanting to try a unique treat only found in New York, so I went out of my way to get it. But Emily denied ever wanting it, leaving Robert chuckling awkwardly.
But didn't you say you wanted to try this the other day? She took the time to get it for you. You should be grateful.
Robert tried to defend me, but Emily glared at me and went to her room. Considering our first meeting went like this, I had reservations about marrying Robert. What saved me was Robert always having my back. When I expressed concerns about living with Emily, he assured me we would never move in with his parents. From then on, Robert always supported me. I didn't really have any complaints. Except for the fact that we had to visit his parents' house regularly. I didn't like it, but I knew I couldn't ignore my in-laws. However, we only visited a few times a year, so it wasn't too painful. Emily, being old-fashioned, believed men should drink and women should do house chores without taking breaks. I tried to contribute as much as I could, serving drinks and preparing food, but Emily never seemed satisfied. Among the gathered relatives, I was one of the younger women, and many told me I could relax and sit. I took their advice, but when Emily saw, she dragged me into another room.
Don't you feel embarrassed? Sitting down will make Robert look bad.
But nowadays, not many people think like that, I responded.
Don't talk back. You should just listen to me, she snapped.
When I talked to Robert about it, he confronted Emily. But that only made things worse, and she became even more hostile towards me. Feeling that way, I vowed in my heart to overcome challenges without consulting anyone if I could handle them. As I visited my in-laws' house a few times, I gradually understood how to behave, and the visits became less of a burden. That's when they found out I was pregnant. The baby was a boy, and Robert and I were overjoyed, deciding to have a grand celebration. Not only did we celebrate just the two of us, but my family also threw a celebration for us. Hearing this, Emily started suggesting that her family should also have a celebration at their house. By then, I was already about 7 months pregnant, and I was experiencing significant pelvic pain and backaches. I wouldn't have wanted to go if it was like before, being asked to help around the house, but since it was a celebration, I was told I didn't have to do anything. On the day of the gathering, when I arrived at the in-laws, not only were my husband's parents there, but other relatives had also shown up. They all wanted to celebrate with us. Honestly, I was taken aback because I hadn't expected all the relatives to come. But it meant they were eagerly awaiting the birth of our baby. I chose a seat at the end of the table so I could easily step away if needed. Everyone started drinking alcohol at the toast, but since I was pregnant, I stuck to drinking tea. While I was sitting and enjoying my meal, I felt a tap on my shoulder. It was Emily, looking displeased. I wondered if I had done something wrong, but that wasn't it. "Hey, what are you sitting around for? Being pregnant isn't an excuse to avoid work. You should come help out too," she demanded. I wouldn't have come if I knew there'd be work, and for the sake of my unborn child, I wanted to stay as relaxed as possible. But Emily seemed oblivious to that and kept insisting. Even after I explained the difficulties of being 7 months pregnant, she wouldn't hear any of it. Reluctantly, I began to assist her, but soon, my body couldn't take it anymore, and I crumpled onto the floor. Feeling I couldn't stand any longer, I found a moment when Emily wasn't around to sit on a kitchen chair. From the kitchen, I could hear the joyful laughter of relatives gathered in the living room. I've heard that by the 7th month, babies can hear sounds, so I was glad my baby could hear these cheerful voices. Suddenly, Emily, who had been in another room, returned and saw me. She was furious.
A daughter-in-law should work her fingers to the bone without eating or drinking. With that, she kicked towards my stomach.
I instinctively protected my belly, but Emily's foot grazed my side. The impact was so painful I fell to the floor, crumpling in pain. I hoped someone around would help, but since the living room had a limited view of the kitchen, nobody seemed to notice. However, upon closer inspection, someone did seem to be watching, but did nothing to intervene or stop Emily.
Just because you're the daughter-in-law doesn't mean you can get carried away. I've never liked you. What if the child isn't even Robert's?
Emily spat out. I needed a break, so I headed back to the living room. With all the relatives there, I thought Emily wouldn't dare lay a hand on me. Indeed, once I was in the living room, she did nothing but glare. Robert, in fact, hadn't come to this gathering. Unfortunately, he had work and was gonna join us after finishing his morning shift. So, I felt rather vulnerable without him there. Amidst my unease, my father-in-law, Harry, came and sat next to me.
Are you all right? You seem a bit off. Didn't Emily do something to you earlier? I couldn't see clearly since I've bad eyes, but it seemed like you two were having a disagreement. If something happened, please tell me.
I was hesitant about telling Harry everything, but I decided to spill the beans. I told him how Emily has been making snide comments and harassing me, and even kicked me in the stomach today. Harry listened quietly, but the moment I finished, he looked furious and said, "I'll apologize on her behalf. I'm really sorry. I think you should go to the hospital right away. Robert's gonna be here soon, so have him drive you." A quietly angry Harry was really scary. He was always a man of few words. Maybe it's folks like him that you should be afraid of when they get mad. I left the rest to Harry and waited in the living room for Robert. But once Emily finished her chores, she came into the living room and tried to sit in front of me. That's when Harry stood up, walked over to her, and poured his drink all over her. Everyone around, including the relatives, were shocked and started murmuring.
What the heck, Harry? Is this alcohol? Why would you do that? Aren't wives supposed to work without eating or drinking? Aren't you a wife too?
Hearing this, the relatives began to whisper amongst themselves.
What does he mean, wives should work without eating or drinking? I've never heard such a thing. And we've never imposed such a rule. You said that to Suzanne, didn't you? She told me earlier.
Hearing Harry's words, the relatives looked at each other in shock.
Who even says that kind of thing nowadays? This isn't true. What's not true? Do you even realize what you did? Kicking a pregnant woman in the stomach?
The relatives became even more alarmed at this revelation.
What? She kicked Suzanne's stomach? But Suzanne is pregnant, right? That's unbelievable.
Seeing her actions exposed in front of everyone, Emily started to panic and began making excuses.
No, that's not true. I didn't kick her, it was just a slight bump. Suzanne's lying to frame me. Don't believe her.
However, it seemed everyone was on my side. They stood in front of me, shielding me from Emily. As the argument continued, we heard Robert's voice from the entrance.
Seems quiet today.
Saying that as he walked into the living room, Robert seemed to be struggling to comprehend the scene unfolding before him. He stopped talking and just stared in our direction.
What happened? Turns out, Emily supposedly kicked Suzanne in the stomach. She's denying it though. What? She knows Suzanne's pregnant, right? What was she thinking? Relax, Robert. I'm fine, and the baby's moving as usual. I'm gonna get checked at the hospital later, so it's okay.
Although I reassured everyone, I was honestly quite worried. My baby seemed fine, and I felt okay except for some rib pain. I believe a checkup at the hospital will confirm that everything's alright. However, I might need to reconsider my relationship with Emily moving forward. As Emily continued making excuses, both Robert and Harry supported me. Emily is making excuses, but Robert is on my side. Harry is also taking care of me, who is pregnant.
I'm totally on Suzanne's side. You are too, right, Dad? Yes. Suzanne's carrying our grandchild. What was Emily thinking? Suzanne, you should go to the hospital as soon as possible.
First off, it seemed that no one trusted Emily. Emily was being ganged up on by relatives.
I've been sending money out of respect for you, but I can't take it anymore. Stay out of my family's life from now on. What the hell is that? Who do you think raised you? I was raised by Dad. He worked hard to support our family, and when he came home, he'd make simple meals for us. He even took us to the amusement park on his days off. What did you ever do for me? I gave birth to you. Isn't that enough?
It seemed Emily couldn't recall anything she had done for Robert after thinking for a while. The relatives, looking exasperated, and Harry looked distressed.
I've been thinking about what to do, and honestly, I want to distance myself from you. What do you mean by distance? I mean, I want a divorce. You don't work, you don't do anything around the house. Now that Robert is on his own, I've been thinking about divorce. Seems like the right time. Divorce? You're never gonna get that from me.
Emily said this and ran out of the house. Nobody had a clue where she went, but it seemed like everyone was relieved with her absence. After confirming that Emily had left, I asked Robert to take me to the hospital. Robert promptly brought the car to the front and drove me to the nearest hospital. The examination results were fine, but I had a large bruise on my side. The doctor said it should heal over time. Rest up. If you need any documentation or photos for evidence, just let me know. I had Robert take a picture of the bruise to keep as evidence. Sometime after that, Robert and I went to Harry's house to talk things over. We thought Emily might be there, but it seems she wasn't. When we asked Harry about Emily's whereabouts, he said, "Remember when she stormed out the other day? I changed the locks after that. So, Emily can't get in. She did come back once, but left once she realized she couldn't get in.
You mentioned about getting a divorce. Were you serious about that? Yeah, I've been thinking about it for a while. I'm really sorry for what Suzanne had to go through. I'll support whatever decision you make.
Although I was scared, there wasn't any harm to the baby, and the bruise was almost healed. But if Emily can't come back, how are they planning to get divorced? As I was pondering this, Harry spoke up. Apparently, he's already hired a top-notch lawyer experienced in divorce cases. According to Harry, it seems Emily has been having an affair with a single man living nearby. He kept quiet about her affair thinking it might upset Robert, but he has decided to divorce after the recent events. Furthermore, there's a high chance Emily is now staying at her lover's place, and he's mailed a legal notice there. It should arrive soon, but who knows what will happen. The initial plan for this discussion was to keep Emily away, but if they're getting divorced, maybe it's fine if we visit Harry's house. At that moment, I remembered how Harry protected me when Emily kicked me and made a proposal.
Why don't you come live with us?
We had previously said we never wanted to live together, so both Robert and Harry looked at me in shock. I wasn't even sure why I'd made such a suggestion. But I felt gratitude towards Harry for helping me. Harry had bad knees, and living alone would be tough. Sending him to a nursing home didn't feel right either. So I thought living with us would be the best solution. And with Harry, living together might even be fun. At first, Harry was reluctant, but after several discussions, he agreed. So it was decided, we'd sell Harry's house and have him move in with us. You never know when Emily might come storming in, and if she's served with divorce papers, she might lash out. So we decided Robert should take some time off from work to focus on the move. A few days after Harry successfully moved, I received a call from Emily, yelling, asking where Harry had gone. Apparently, Emily had broken a window and entered the house, not knowing how to turn off the blaring alarm. However, the family had already sold the house, and new people lived there, so Emily was trespassing. Just as I thought she'd done something outrageous, Emily let out a small scream. While still on the phone, I could hear police sirens in the background, and shortly after, a voice from an officer, and then the call cut off. Emily ended up being arrested for breaking and entering, so I went to visit her with Harry and a lawyer. She seemed surprised to see both me and the lawyer, expecting only Harry, but quickly composed herself.
Suzanne, what are you doing here? I don't want anything to do with you. I don't want anything to do with you either. That's why I want a divorce. That's why I brought the attorney today. I've told you, I'm not getting a divorce. I'll never do it.
Regardless of Emily's pleas, she and Harry eventually divorced. Emily was quite a handful, even causing a scene at the police station and had to be restrained. While Harry felt pity for Emily and didn't demand alimony from her. I feel so bad letting you pay.
Nah, I'll be relying on you two from now on, so let me do this for you. Plus, I'm so grateful you agreed to live with me. I might even get to see my grandkids soon. I'm a lucky man.
During dinner, Harry, moved by emotion, started to cry. Seeing him, both Robert and I also began to cry, earning us some odd looks from the restaurant staff, a memory we all cherish. A few months later, I safely gave birth to a baby boy. Both mother and child were healthy, and it was said to be one of the smoothest deliveries. Perhaps the breathing techniques and mindset a friend had taught me during pregnancy played a role. The baby was so tiny, I felt that if I took my eyes off him for a second, he'd disappear. While it was primarily my responsibility to care for our son, both Robert and Harry said they'd help out in any way they could. True to his word, Robert would do chores like grocery shopping and cleaning dishes when he got home, and Harry would look after the baby. I can focus on taking care of my son, and I don't feel any signs of postpartum depression. Though I used to have an unstable disposition, now, I don't feel any of that. I think it's because I'm living a happy life. I never told anyone this, but early in my marriage, Emily's harassment was so severe, I considered divorcing Robert. But Robert always stood by my side and helped me out. Still, there were times I felt I couldn't bear it. Now, though, I feel fortunate about my relationships and am glad I didn't divorce. Emily, though mean and unpleasant, is someone we won't have to deal with anymore. She was given probation but kept shoplifting because she was out of money. Unable to pay bail, she ended up in prison. I wouldn't say money is everything, but seeing Emily's situation, it feels like without money, happiness is hard to come by. So, I'm careful not to splurge unnecessarily and want to spend on my son as much as I can. I can't work right now, but soon, I'm gonna start a part-time job and save up for my son's future. A lot happened during my pregnancy, but when I think about it, it's all part of my life journey, and I cherish it. From now on, as a family of 4, we've made up our minds to work towards even greater happiness.
I lent you $50,000 and I want every penny back.
Suddenly the phone rang and my sister-in-law made a shocking statement to me. What? I was stunned, but she didn't hesitate to say harsh words.
You've been taking advantage of Bob's kindness and lying left and right. I can't believe it. I don't even see you as family anymore.
My sister-in-law's voice on the phone was high-pitched. Her furious face flashed into my eyes. Not considered family? It was my sister-in-law who decided to cut ties with me soon after I got married. This treatment is unfair because she never took me seriously from the beginning.
You know, I saw you yesterday, dining out at that restaurant. If you're doing so well, why don't you just pay me back already?
Huh?
If that's the topic, please let me say something.
I became increasingly irritated and uncomfortable talking to my sister-in-law. Hold on a sec. I'd rather talk about this face to face. Can we meet up?
Yes, that's what I wanted.
I've been married for 5 years, but I haven't seen my sister-in-law since our first family gathering. I decided it was time for a direct confrontation. I've always been compelled to spill out all my troubles face to face with my sister-in-law. However, what was lurking behind the unease I felt on that phone call was something far beyond my wildest imagination. I'm Lydia Matthews, 29 years old. Been married for 5 years, and my husband and I are now talking about having kids soon. I work for a beverage company and have continued doing so even after marriage. I met my husband, Bob, when I was 23. During a group date with friends, the moment our eyes met, Bob made an intense move on me.
I fell head over heels for you at first sight. Would you go out with me, even just as friends?
Well, I don't even know your name yet.
Oh. I'm Bob Matthews, 26. I'm in insurance sales. Your long black hair is so beautiful.
At first, I thought he was joking and was completely taken aback, but after talking with him, I found him to be incredibly fun and genuine. By the time we were ready to part, we were totally comfortable with each other. The reason we decided to get married after only a year of dating was because I could truly feel how much Bob cherished me and genuinely loved me. However, I would come to find out, 5 years later, that his initial approach was far from pure. Bob's family situation was such that his mother had already passed away, and his sister was taking care of their aging father, who required assistance. Due to this, we kept our marriage introduction brief, and simply by submitting our marriage certificate, we became husband and wife. I was incredibly happy with just that. Except for one thing. It was during our visit to his family's home for the marriage introduction.
I am Lydia Johnson, and I will be marrying Bob. I kindly ask for your blessing.
Upon seeing me, Bob's sister looked visibly startled. Then she looked me up and down for a moment. Okay. Take care of each other, okay? I'll take care of my father, so don't worry. My sister-in-law's attitude when we first met was one of obvious contempt. I haven't seen her sister-in-law since that day. I'm sorry. My sister doesn't like the fact that Lydia grew up in a single-parent household. She has a prejudice that she must have had a difficult upbringing.
Oh, the two families haven't even had a proper meeting yet.
Considering my father's condition, I think it would be best not to force a family meeting. Even considering my father-in-law's situation, I couldn't help but feel frustrated. A few days after our introduction, Bob told me something very important. with a slightly hesitant but firm look on his face. Ever since that day, my sis has been going on and on about single-parent households being poor or being too persistent. She just keeps badmouthing you. To top it all off, she said she'd cut ties with you if I married you. So, I kinda snapped back at her, saying that's fine by me. Hearing the word cut ties from my sister-in-law was a shock. But I really don't want to deal with someone who dislikes me that much from the first meeting. Moreover, not having to deal with Bob's family and just living the two of us didn't sound bad for young me. When we started living together, we decided to contribute $1,000 each for our living expenses. On top of that, we decided to save in a joint bank account, which would be our shared property. I was earning more than Bob, but it was his idea to contribute equal amounts. But that arrangement fell apart just 3 months in. Got a call from sis today. She said it's been tough since I left home.
Did she quit her job?
Yeah, she's been looking after Dad full-time. Bob's father suffered a stroke 2 years ago and was bedridden. Apparently they considered putting him in a nursing home, but he stubbornly did not want to leave the house.
So, I'm really sorry to ask this, but in addition to the ongoing support, I'm thinking of sending an additional $500 a month to my family. I'll manage the related expenses. So I would like you to pay a little more for our living expenses.
$500, huh? It's unavoidable, I guess. If my mom were to fall ill, I'd probably ask the same from you. All right. Starting next month, I'll put in $1,500 and you contribute $500. Let's try that.
Thank you.
So I decided to contribute a little more to the household finances. Because of Bob's work, he often leaves late when customers call him, and he always gets home late. He frequently went out drinking, sometimes staying out until the early hours of the morning. Still, I think we were a loving couple, often traveling together on weekends. 3 years after we started sending money, Bob's bedridden father passed away. He apparently decided to have a small, private funeral.
The wake is tonight, so I might not be able to come back until tomorrow.
Okay, then I'll hurry up and get ready. I wasn't able to visit my father-in-law during his illness, so I wanted to at least give him a proper send-off.
No, it's okay if you don't come. Remember, my sister said she wanted to cut ties with you, right?
I remembered something Bob said to me when we first got married. However, it is common courtesy to attend such an important event. It's okay. If my sister sees you, she'll definitely complain. I don't want her to make a fuss at her father's funeral. I just want him to pass away quietly, with only his close relatives. I had no choice but to follow his words. After all, my husband, the chief mourner, had refused. Instead of attending the funeral, I offered to cover half the funeral expenses.
I'm really sorry that I couldn't attend due to my sister's circumstances. Thank you so much.
Bob thanked me many times and headed to the venue. I was angry at my sister-in-law for making Bob feel this way, but I thought this would finally cut ties with his family. But about 2 months after Bob's father passed away, Bob told me an incredible story.
About Dad's inheritance, apart from the house, he didn't have any savings. So, I decided to leave the house to my sister since she's been looking after him all this while.
That makes sense. I think that's a good idea.
But here's the shocking part, turns out, she is pregnant.
What? How? Why? When did my sister-in-law have time for that? When did she find the time? My mind was full of questions.
Right? I was surprised too. Apparently, my sister had a boyfriend, and he used to come over to their house sometimes.
Wow. But, she is only 33.
Yes, she found out that she was pregnant a while ago and she thought about terminating the pregnancy. However, around the same time my father died, so she decided to continue with the pregnancy. But there is a problem. Can you believe it? When she told her boyfriend she was pregnant, he got up and left.
Well, Bob's father passed away a while ago, and thinking about caring for him and raising children. I can kind of understand how her boyfriend feels overwhelmed by that responsibility.
The problem is that my sister doesn't have any money. She quit her job to take care of her father. And now that the father has passed away, the pension is not coming in. I think she might be the reincarnation of someone else or something. She can't even imagine having an abortion.
I can imagine I would feel the same way if my mother had just passed away. I felt like I could understand both her boyfriend's feelings and my sister-in-law's feelings. I was speechless.
So she's asking if we can continue to support her financially until she secures a place for a daycare center.
Of course, but would the amount we gave her be enough?
Yeah, there was no cash inheritance. So, I'm thinking of sending her $1,000 for now. I truly feel awful for my sister.
Bob apologized sincerely. Despite being estranged, I think about my sister-in-law every payday. We are the only siblings in our family, so I couldn't help but understand my husband's feelings. As a result, I had to cover her living expenses for the next 2 years of her life while Bob continued to support her. After that, our savings continued to dwindle due to her childbirth expenses and baby gifts. My husband occasionally got pictures of her child, but of course, I never received a word of thanks. Even though I wished I'd stop, I couldn't cut the support until she secured daycare for her child.
My sister found her job and secured daycare for her child. So the financial aid is scheduled to end next month. Isn't it about time to start thinking about having children?
How I had longed to hear those words from my husband. Tears unexpectedly filled my eyes. Finally, we can lead a normal life. Just as I was thinking that, I received that furious phone call. That day was Saturday. I was off and my husband was called to work by a client. Just after lunch, my house phone, which I rarely use, rang. Hello?
Hey, Lydia? I've reached my limit, so I'm gonna tell you straight. The $50,000 you borrowed from me, pay it back in full.
The call was from my sister-in-law, who suddenly dropped this bomb on me. What? I was taken aback, but my sister-in-law showed no mercy.
You've been taking advantage of Bob's kindness and lying all this time. Shame on you. I no longer recognize you as a family.
My sister-in-law raised her voice sharply over the phone. I could almost see her expression through her tone.
You know, I saw you yesterday. Dining out at a restaurant.
With the same intensity as before, she accused me of something that made no sense. Yes, I went out for lunch with my colleagues at work yesterday.
Huh? Colleagues? If you can afford that, then pay me back.
What?
If that's the case, let me tell you something.
Though I was getting irritated, I felt something off about this conversation with my sister-in-law. Wait a minute. I want to tell you face to face, but is it okay if I meet you now?
Yes, that's exactly what I wanted.
We've been married for 5 years now, and since we were first introduced to each other at my in-laws' house, we hadn't seen each other once, so I decided to confront her directly. I had the urge to let her do it and vent all the frustrations I had felt over the years. I had arranged to meet my sister-in-law in 2 hours at a restaurant, halfway between our homes. While driving, I suddenly couldn't help but worry about her child. If she were to bring her child along, going in with an aggressive attitude might not be the best approach. While thinking about this, I arrived at the restaurant and found my sister-in-law sitting alone. Hello, it's been a while.
You're depressed and stuck at home, aren't you? If you're that good, pay me back the $50,000 you owe me right now.
Huh?
I'm working fine, otherwise I wouldn't be able to send $1,000 a month to you. Huh? If you want your mysterious $50,000 returned, please return the money we sent over the past 5 years.
I blurted out everything I wanted to say on the phone.
Don't be silly. I'm the one who's sending you money because you're depressed and can't work.
What is this depression you always talk about? The unsettling feeling I had during the phone call with my sister-in-law grew stronger. I voiced out the concern that had been bothering me. By the way, where's your child today? Did you not bring him because you don't like me?
Huh? I don't have any kids?
What? I thought he got into a daycare and you found a job. After cutting us off, how much more do you plan to rely on us? What?
I've been working for the past 2 years.
What are you talking about? It became clear that neither of us understood what the other was saying, and we both fell silent. Probably, just like me, my sister-in-law's mind was racing trying to piece everything together. There was only one person at the center of this confusion.
Please, just listen to me for a moment. Weren't you the one who wanted to cut ties?
I felt dizzy. I heard from Bob.
Your mother told him that if he wanted to marry, he'd have to sever ties with his family. She didn't want to give her daughter away just to be burdened with caregiving duties.
I was at a loss for words. My sister-in-law continued to tell me about the past 5 years, as recounted by my husband. What my sister-in-law was saying was far removed from reality as I knew it. Shortly after we got married, my mother became ill, so I quit my job and returned to my parents' home to care for her. We didn't have any money, so Bob asked my sister-in-law to give us $300 monthly allowance. We also subsidized hospitalization and surgical expenses as needed. 2 years ago, Bob got into debt, so my sister-in-law took over more than $20,000. And after my mother passed away, I became depressed. My husband's lies were skillfully manipulating the emotions of an eldest daughter, his sister. Even after her estrangement, she wanted to help her brother and helped me.
I wanted to attend your mother's funeral and visit you when you weren't feeling well, but Bob said it was impossible because you were depressed.
Well, just the other day she saw me eating at a restaurant and thought I was lying about everything.
My mother is doing well, and my brother graduated from university and got a job. I've never had depression, and all of the living expenses are covered by the money I earn.
I put my hand on my forehead and closed my eyes. It felt like all the hardships of the past came back to me all at once. What happened during those 5 years when I thought I was somehow happy? What side of my husband did I see? I always thought you hated me. I heard that you wanted to disown me as my sister-in-law. What? Now it was my sister-in-law's turn to be shocked. I told her everything Bob had told me the last 5 years.
Yes, I quit my job, but my father had a decent pension and savings. He was saving for his funeral, so I've already returned to work.
What do you mean by pregnant, by the way? I wrote in detail from the time she found out she was pregnant until her boyfriend abandoned her and she became a single mother. It sounded so ridiculous that we both laughed out loud, wondering how we could be so gullible.
You said earlier that you cover all your living expenses yourself, right?
Yes, I had to cover the cost while transferring money. My sister-in-law exuded a different anger than when she called. And she said with a solemn expression,
"I'll never forgive that guy. Lydia, could you please do some research on this? I can't believe Bob planned this all by himself."
Yes. I can't forgive him either. We exchanged contact information and decided to call it quits that day. About a month later, my sister-in-law called me and we met at the same restaurant as before. Terrible news. Shortly before the wedding, Bob reconnected with his ex-girlfriend from high school. Her name is Isabella, and she seems to be working at a nightclub now. My sister-in-law let out a big sigh.
"I'm sorry, but the first day you came to my house I thought you were Isabella. You look exactly like his high school girlfriend."
When I first met Bob, he told me your long black hair is beautiful. I have long straight hair that reaches my waist and am quite tall. People who met me for the first time often commented on my friendly demeanor.
Isabella was pretty, but she was really no good. I'm sorry I looked like a jerk just because you looked like her.
It turns out that Isabella is a year older than Bob and she attended a different high school. Isabella became pregnant when Bob was 17 years old. His panicked parents scraped together $1,000 for her abortion. All the while, they didn't know it was part of Isabella's plan. At the time, Isabella was dating several men and she claimed was pregnant and defrauded them of abortion costs.
The smart thing about Isabella is that she didn't keep all her money to herself. She shared it with her boyfriends and shared her secrets, so her men were even more attracted to her.
I felt a chill run down my spine. Here's the story behind my husband's obsession with long black hair. He saw Isabella's high school days through me.
It's very creepy.
My sister-in-law nodded in silent agreement. Currently Isabella is working in a nightclub. Although her makeup style has changed, her signature long black hair is still intact. From the past stories told by my sister-in-law, it was clear that Isabella was behind the exploitation of the past 5 years. Just then, my phone rang and I received a new message. Huh? Lydia, my sister's child has become ill. He needs a transplant overseas. I want to do everything I can, so could you lend me $20,000 of your savings? Today. Please be prepared. At this point, the whole situation started to feel like a comedy skit. As we were thinking about what to do next together, my sister-in-law's cell phone rang.
Hello, Bob? What should I do? Lydia was deceived by her brother and became a guarantor for a loan. Please! I want you to lend me $30,000 in cash right now. My money alone is not enough.
My sister-in-law looked into my eyes and she gave me a wicked smile. Okay, calm down. I'll have it ready by tomorrow, okay?
Thank you. Let me know as soon as you're ready.
After hanging up, my sister-in-law let out a long sigh.
Tomorrow we will put an end to this matter once and for all. The fact that he is now demanding such a large amount of money means they are making the final move. We won't let Isabella do what she wants.
I swallowed hard, feeling a shiver run down my spine. It was definitely an anticipation for the upcoming showdown. The next evening we waited for my husband at our usual restaurant. Despite his wishes to meet at his sister's house, we chose this location. I was sitting behind my sister-in-law, wearing a hat to hide my face.
Hi. Did you bring the money?
First of all, sit down. How is Lydia doing? Even though she's depressed, since when did she become a guarantor? Well, it seems like it happened shortly before her mother died. Lydia seems to be depressed again after this incident. I heard my husband's voice behind my sister-in-law and I was getting irritated. How could he falsely claim that my mother was dead? I couldn't help myself and stood up. Hey, aren't you Bob? I thought you were working today. I pretended it was a chance encounter and moved to their table. Ignoring my wide-eyed husband, my sister-in-law confronted me aggressively.
Lydia? Aren't you depressed? If you're fine, pay me back my $50,000. You liar! Were you perhaps trying to swindle another $30,000?
What? What are you doing? Your kid's sick, right?
I've been sending $1,000 every month, and now you want another $20,000. You're not lying, are you? What kid? I'm the one sending the money.
As the two began to bicker, the husband's face turned a deep shade of blue.
Hey! What's the deal?
We both pressed, closing in on him.
It's not what you think. It's, well,
Starting to sweat profusely, my husband, seemingly out of excuses, began to apologize.
I'm so sorry. It's all my fault. The debt's on me. If I don't sort it out today, I'm gonna be in big trouble. Please! Both of you, help me out.
What?
Have you been up to no good for the past 5 years? I got hooked on gambling and now I'm drowning in debt. I didn't mean to deceive anyone. Please, help me.
Sister-in-law looked down at her desperate brother with a cold gaze. Then she pushed him away a little and said,
Enough of that behavior. Are you relying on Isabella? Are you planning on stealing her money and running away with her, whispering sweet nothings to her? What?
It was obvious that my husband was surprised. He jumped slightly in shock.
Too bad, you've already found out.
My sister-in-law said, showing him the report from her private investigator. The strength was gone from my husband's trembling shoulders. Suddenly, his obedient demeanor disappeared and he let out a defiant cry.
Oh! Why did you expose me now? Why are you both together? I thought you two broke up.
All the patrons of the store were staring at them, but my husband didn't seem to mind.
Damn it! I almost succeeded. Keep being fooled until the end. You're both idiots.
The tension seemed to subside and he began to vent his anger.
Give me some more money. Lydia, you were happy to marry me, weren't you? Please stay by my side until the end for me.
My husband continued rambling and started bad-mouthing me and my sister-in-law. Bang! Without thinking, I slammed the table to shut him up.
Don't be silly. What are you happy about? Give me back the time I wasted on you. Every time you see my hair, you think of Isabella, don't you? It's disgusting.
My husband was scared to see me, who is usually calm, throw a tantrum.
You idiot.
Do you know what you did?
Explain everything.
If you don't know, I'm going to the police right now. Thinking he couldn't escape his sister's gaze, my husband finally looked down. After a long silence, he gave up and started talking piece by piece about what had happened so far. Just before our marriage, he reunited with Isabella and together they hatched a plan to extort money from both me and my sister-in-law. After his father passed away and left him an inheritance, he also wanted to get his sister's share. He intended to withdraw both our joint savings and my personal money and run away with Isabella.
I loved Isabella since high school. I loved Lydia too, but she was just a stand-in for Isabella. I need Isabella.
I despised my husband, but it still hurts when I hear his words. The next moment, my sister-in-law blushed in anger and slapped Bob in the face.
Enough with making a fool out of Lydia. After all she's provided for you, you'll repay every cent you owe. Plus, compensation for the wasted 5 years you took from Lydia.
With a stern glare fixed on my husband, my sister-in-law got to the point. You haven't touched your inheritance yet, have you?
Why, do you ask? That money's for my wedding with Isabella. I can't give that up.
With a sly grin, my sister-in-law laid out several photos on the table.
Oh, let me share something interesting. Isabella has someone else she's serious about. Looks like she's considering marrying him.
The couple in the photos looked happy, walking arm in arm. Isabella, with her long black hair and tall stature, indeed looked a lot like me.
Well, even if he's her main guy, isn't he just another target for her scam? Apparently, she's been caught for marriage fraud before. That's a lie. It's got to be. Because once we get the money, she's gonna marry me. That's what I'm saying. It's a marriage scam, don't you get it? It's a lie. I don't believe it. Please tell me it's not true.
As my husband's voice rose, he began to tremble uncontrollably. Eventually, he leaned on the sofa and began to cry. This time it seemed like he had run out of energy, so I put the business card of a lawyer. To my surprise, his hands were shaking when he received the card.
I demand $100,000 in compensation for wasting 5 years and putting me in debt. I can't pay for that. Lydia, forgive me. Help me.
When he begged, his sister also called out to him, as if offering him a helping hand.
Don't worry. All I'm asking for is $50,000. I'm not asking for compensation. You know our father only has $50,000 left in his estate. That's why it's gonna be okay. Just sell the family home. I got an estimate, and it's worth about $100,000. So, sell it quickly. If not, I'll sue you for fraud, along with Isabella.
Finding out about the inheritance from my father-in-law and that my husband had inherited the family home was completely unexpected. How many times has he lied to me? It sends a chill down my spine to think about what would have happened if my sister-in-law hadn't called. We enlisted the help of a lawyer friend of my sister-in-law's to ensure that the agreed compensation was paid after signing the appropriate documents. After that, Bob's parents' house was sold for the amount my sister-in-law estimated, and I received the compensation as expected. I don't think I could have extracted this much compensation from my husband on my own, so I am truly grateful to my sister-in-law. I soon divorced and moved back closer to my childhood home. Once the money was returned, my sister-in-law moved to a place where she and her mother were familiar. According to my husband, the next day, Isabella, who lost the man she was interested in, dumped him.
I dated you for 5 years thinking I would get money from you, but it's all your fault that I even lost the man I wanted. It was a waste of time. Don't show your face again, you god of poverty.
She seemed to scream and then disappear immediately. My sister-in-law considered charging Isabella with fraud, but could not find any concrete evidence as Bob was actively cooperating. I couldn't sue Isabella for her compensation, but she didn't get much money from Bob for the time she spent. I feel like I was able to get a little revenge because I was able to intervene in their relationship. Although I may never see my sister-in-law again, I wish her a happy life as her comrade. After all, we have accepted and supported each other as a family. My husband may not have been in debt, but he lost his wife, her only sister, the home he grew up in, and his beloved girlfriend. According to what I heard from a mutual friend of his, he lost motivation and quit his job and is now making a living by working night shifts at a 24-hour convenience store. It is said that when he spotted a tall girl with long black hair, he foolishly followed her and even got into trouble with the police. Seeing the sad end of my husband, even feeling a bit sorry for him, I realize I've genuinely moved on. After my divorce, I cut my long hair and dyed it a bright color. I'm thinking of just doing what I love for a while and pampering myself.